ladies and gentlemen, I am Rob of the Lair of OmnusI YouTube channel. Today is the 27th day of August, which means it is time for the 27th word for the RPGaDay, as was promoted by the RPG Brigade. And the word for today is suspense. Good word. Suspense is tricky. Unfortunately, as we play games that increasingly become very bottled and labeled, and memes are a thing, and tropes, and we're understanding them more and more, it's sometimes tricky to get appropriate suspense when you want it. So, analyzing suspense. Suspense is anticipation. It is the players knowing something is happening or is about to happen, and either wanting or dreading that thing to happen. And the important part of suspense is not being entirely sure if or when the event is going to happen. There are, in my mind, 4 major ways of creating suspense that generally work for me fairly well, that I have used time and time again on my players. And I say used on my players because suspense is a tool. It is used on someone else to attempt to garner a response. That's what it is. So in my mind, suspense is best gained in 4 different ways. The first one, and probably the best known, as the cliffhanger. The cliffhanger, which is a term from back in radio serials where you would have episodes that would be broken up in lengths of time. The story would end with the hero or heroes in some sort of peril or a dangerous situation, and you would be enticing your audience to make sure that they paid attention, tune in again for the next week or next day's episode, so that they could catch what happens next. You keep them on the edge of their seat so that they can't wait to get back and see how the hero gets out of this one. And the term cliffhanger, of course, the most notorious way that you do that is if the hero is literally hanging off of a cliff with certain death below. How will they ever get out of this situation? And there's many different ways that cliffhanger can be resolved, but mostly I find if you want to keep your players engaged in an ongoing storyline, and if you only run one-shots, this isn't really an issue for you, but if you really want them to be engaged, you generally don't leave them on a happy, satisfied note. You leave them with something coming up that they can anticipate. Maybe it's the end of the night. They are doing their thing, and all of a sudden, even though it's close to the end of the session, you immediately drop a bunch of figures out ready for combat. And the players go, uh-oh, and they say, and we'll continue this next time. So all of a sudden, they can see what's ahead of their characters and know that they're going to have to resolve this next time, in whatever state that the players were in before this all unfolded. This can be traumatic. This can be something that creates tension, but it should be something that keeps the players engaged and wanting to know what happens next, which is especially important for your players to have a bond with their characters and care what happens to their characters. We've discussed this a few times this month, but the cliffhanger is one of those ways that you can use the events of a story to cement your players and capture their interest so that the next time they want to know immediately what happens, what gets going, what can be achieved. The second way I find is the old switcheroo, the false suspense. Where the players have all the expectations of suspense. Everything seems that something of import is about to happen, and then nope, It's actually not what they thought. For example, a classic example of this, they're looking for the killer in a large house. They go into the ballroom and there are billowing curtains, and they can see that there are shoes. There are shoes right underneath the curtain showing somebody is hiding behind it. So being appropriately stupid, the heroes move forward clutching improvised weapons or maybe a flashlight, and they move closely and dramatic music plays and they get to the curtain, and then they whisk the curtain aside and there's nothing there. They're just empty shoes. Just a falsehood. It built up suspense, it built up tension, and gone. Which is usually the time for the killer to basically come from the next set of curtains to attack. The moment that, oh my gosh, we got all this for that, and then you give them that. A very classic way of setting up suspense and getting a payoff from it. Another way of delivering suspense, I find, is obfuscation, which just means concealing things, hiding things from your players. If you go through the effort of game mastering and you have a screen in front of you, you can hide all kinds of stuff behind there. Ideally, if your players don't have easy transport all around your space so they can see what's going on behind that screen, you can keep surprises back there and pull things out that the players weren't expecting. If you have your screen and they open the door and all of a sudden you pull out the miniature for Tiamat, 5-headed dragon. Well, that's going to build some suspense. And you can tease it, as I just talked about the example of letting them think they're going to get one thing, and then giving them something that is completely not what they expected. But a lot of times, just not knowing, having a sense that there is a danger, that there is a risk of something, but not knowing exactly what it is or how bad it could be, and then having it sprung makes it 1,000 times worse than if they saw, Tiamat, and they could decide, are we going to run away? Are we going to fight? What are we going to do? Much more suspenseful if they open up the door and boom, Tiamat. So, those are certainly 3 ways to build suspense, and again, in my mind, the 4th way of doing it is, quite honestly, it's kind of the worksmanship way of doing it, which is by crafting the hints and clues narratively through the story. And in a lot of cases, it's manually building up the suspense by giving the characters tip-offs, clues, and hints that lead them to a conclusion. And as it gets closer and closer, they may start to worry that it's maybe more than they can handle, or maybe it'll lead to something terrible. And sometimes the danger of that is the players might be completely oblivious, and all of your hard work goes down the drain because they didn't follow the clues. The breadcrumbs did not lead them where you wanted them to. But if it's done correctly and you put it under the player's nose so they have no choice but to follow, seemingly, and they want to engage and pursue in the story, and you entice them, you can build suspense that way through hints, through narrative, through reactions of people, through various things that the players can build a sum that'll lead them to a level of suspense and anticipation. In my mind, those are 4 of the best tools that you can use for bringing your players to a level of suspense where they can't wait for the payoff. They can't wait to see what happens. And I think generating that without having to just show them it and then make them deal with it, building suspense and not showing sometimes is far more impactful, far more memorable in the long run, and ultimately makes for a better story. Even if you aren't as interested in story, you're interested more in drama and a tactical session, a suspense building moment where the players get the clues and they can work towards a resolution that they're anticipating just feels better than going through random pre-generated encounters and ultimately leading up to a boss battle that they knew would eventually come but really didn't anticipate up till that point, or didn't feel strongly about it up till that point. The best dungeon crawls I've ever faced were ones where that sense of suspense was something that was kept in the mind of the creator. Classic example of that for me was Greyhawk Ruins, where you have the shattered towers, but as you go through the towers, each level has a story that is playing out. A clash between two gods using the monsters as their playthings, or an experiment that went mad and this is how you deal with it, or the playground of a mad mage. How did all this whimsy and lunacy come about? That's telling a story, and if the players buy into it, it can lead to suspense, it can lead to fulfillment and anticipation and excitement. So, I hope this connects with what I'm trying to say, because it's something I feel fairly strongly about. It's the sign of a master craftsman delivering an adventure where you can affect the players and get them to want the next step, to need to find out what happens next. And that is the heart of suspense. The anticipation, the need for resolution. So, hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. Lair of OmnusI, you're always welcome here. And I look forward to entertaining you. Hopefully, at the very least, you come and see me tomorrow when I put forward another video, the next time I crawl in front of the internet for another RPGaDay question. Thank you, and farewell.